Welcome, everybody. Here's the topic that everyone is probably wondering, okay, what does he got to say on this? Well, there's a reason why I included this video after my State of Reality videos, because if you take all of the spiritual text as a whole, it's actually giving you a whole picture of the state of reality. And the state of reality, that we view, that you are an awareness at the center of an infinitely expanding field of intelligence, and it's contracting at the same time. Every time you look at a part, it looks exactly the same as the larger whole that's a part of, because every point in time and space is connected instantaneously. Time and space is an illusion. And so scientists like to say, well, they have all these theories about dark matter and all these things because they can see that there's energy everywhere at every point in time and space, but there's this illusion of matter that they're looking at. It isn't real, right? You're just looking at an electrical circuit inside of a field. And so every point in time and space has the same amount of energy, which is infinite because it's all connected. And so, the spiritual texts actually tell us this story that you are one with everything. But there's no way to, the only way to get that truth through history is by creating parables and hiding the truth in a parable. And so you see that in all of our spiritual works, whether it's the Bible or the Torah or the Quran, or the Tao, the Upanishads, the Vedas. The Vedas are amazing works, and it's given rise to all these religions, but the religions have taken, literal texts and kind of worked off of a literal text instead of seeing the deeper meaning. One of my favorite movies is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And one of my favorite scenes is when I think it's the Jade, the evil woman who has the darts. She's the one with the darts, and then her apprentice who ends up wielding green destiny. And Chow Yun-fat, chases her through the half of the movie to get the sword, the green destiny. Is she asks her apprentice, and she gets mad at her apprentice because she realizes her apprentice has surpassed her in her skill level. And she said, you didn't understand the meaning behind the words. Even if I would have explained it to you, you wouldn't have understood, because her level of understanding just wasn't there. She just hadn't reached that. We all get to different levels of understanding. And I've had my own personal epiphanies through my entire life where, I didn't understand something or why I was going through something. But then as soon as I had this epiphany, it's like, oh, that's why I was going through that. This is the reason behind what I was going through. And so there is a deeper meaning behind all of the spiritual texts, and they're all pointing to that same deeper truth, that there is a one universal intelligence that's making decisions, and every single decision inside of that universal intelligence is in line with those decisions. It's like, it becomes to the argument between predestination and not, is my path predestined or is it not predestined? Well, the reality is I believe predestination is real because every decision lines up with every other decision. My Father and I are one. My decisions are your decisions. And when you get to that state, you're out of a state of conflict. And these next few slides that I'm going to show you and we're going to talk about, I believe every spiritual text supports that you are living in a universe that is one divine being, and all of your decisions, whether you realize it or not, and all the decisions of the people around you are in line with that. You are all working together, and that's why if you believe that you are separate and you start, like if you attack someone else, that comes back on you. And there's a reason why that slows down, why karma slows down. And I'll give some of the reasons behind that in some of my other videos. The resistances that you see between yourself and your environment will actually create the amount of time for karma to take enactment. But karma, there's a way to burn off all of your karma, and we're going to go through that. So I love the Bible. The Bible actually, I believe, has all the keys in it for all of, everything that is available. It shows you the route. It gives you all the keys. And I didn't actually write it on here, and that's the last book I'm going to talk about, but the book of Job could be put into any one of these books. The book of Job stands alone by itself, and the book of Job tells the entire story of the Bible from beginning to ending, and we'll talk about that. But the Tao, it's such a wonderful chapters and written things that supported Buddhism and Confucianism and legalism. And this the Bhagavad Gita, I'm probably not pronouncing that right, integrates dualism and theism, which is actually two separate things, right? You have this idea that there's these two opposing forces of nature, this is good and evil, whereas the Upanishads are monotheistic. And so that's kind of the difference between monotheism and a dualism. And a dualism is an illusion, as I will show, and that the texts support. So, one of my favorite ones actually is the Lotus Sutra. I haven't read all through the Lotus Sutra, but the Lotus Sutra is very revealing. Let's go to the next slide. I wrote in this, underneath this Lotus Sutra, I found this online. A theme expressed throughout the sutra is that all beings will attain Buddhahood and attain nirvana. The Buddha is presented by the Lotus Sutra as Dharmakaya, the unity of all things and beings, unmanifested, beyond existence or non-existence, unbound by space and time, which is what our reality is telling us. Modern physicists really haven't caught up to the fact that everything is alive. They like to think that, oh, that's a particle out here. Well, no, look at it closer. You're looking at a field. It's a field of intelligence with energy and information running through it, and it's collapsing towards the center, just like everything else. So yeah, and then I wrote the definition here. Dualism means the belief in two supreme opposing powers or gods, which is where you start in the beginning, but of Genesis and in the Bible, and how you start in your thinking, right? You feel like you're isolated. You feel like you're separate from your environment. And the longer that you go through your journey, the more you realize that you're actually interacting with yourself. Every time that you are interacting with anything, you're interacting with yourself. All of us are connected. And I like this one verse, and I was taught this by somebody a long time ago. That somebody taught about the names of God that was associated with my parents' church years ago. This is 20 years ago. And he gave a teaching about this. And this one verse, it shows that the Bible had been tampered with. And I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob by the name of God Almighty, but by the name of Jehovah I was not known to them. But the Bible uses Jehovah and Yahweh earlier than Exodus 6:3, obviously. But this is telling you that God didn't present himself to those people. He presented himself to them as El Shaddai, or breasted one. And so it kind of shows that there was some discrepancies in the text. The Torah had been messed with, and maybe the original version of the Torah is more accurate. I don't know. But this verse here shows that there's some discrepancy there. And the word El Elyon first appears in Genesis, and the priest Melchizedek is a servant of El Elyon, the Most High God. And so, obviously the Most High God would include all of creation, and that's why unconditional love falls in that Most High God category, because you're a part and with everything. So if any of you are interested, there's so many different names of God. I could talk about the names of God forever. I actually wrote a book, a report on this when I was in college. I was in a religious, I can't remember if it was a religious class or a class on the Bible, but I was in a class where we had to, write an end year report, and I did my report on the names of God, because there's so many different ones, and the way that they're used are used in a lot of different ways. Elohim is used a lot of different ways in Psalms, and all these are used in a lot of different ways throughout the Bible. So let's go to the next slide. This slide I'm going to take a little bit of a while on, because I'm going to talk about how the Bible moves from the original conflict all the way to the end, where you're enlightened and you elevate. So this is our initial conflict, right? Now the serpent was more crafty than the wild animals the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but he said, not to eat the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden. You must not touch it or you will die. And that's a very interesting thing. Why would you die? Obviously she's immortal, and she's going to die if she decides to eat of this supposed knowledge. But I'm going to say it's belief and not knowledge. That's one way that the scripture could actually trip you up, right? They're trying to sell you that it's knowledge, but it's actually a belief, right? If somebody's telling you a lie, then you're believing in a lie. It's not knowledge. So, for God knows that when you eat of your eyes, you'll be open and you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. So he's trying to sell knowledge. That's the lie. When the woman saw the fruit of the tree was good for pleasing the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took it and ate it. And then you know the story where now they saw they were naked and they had to put fig leaves over their bodies to protect themselves. Well, when you see something opposing, now you believe that there is a good and an evil. Now you see something opposing. Now you need to protect yourself. Now you need to cover yourself because now you're vulnerable, right? And so that theme runs all the way through, the Old Testament. Now you have a God of conflict, Yahweh. And now the Israelites are fighting all these people back and forth. And by the end of the Bible, you get to, Jesus, who sells unconditional, he's saying unconditional love. This is the way to enlightenment. And so he fell in love with everything around him. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. And then he's saying that I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I think I'd like to, I think that gets construed, and the Christian world actually pulls that verse out to say, hey, you need to worship this person. But I think that's unfounded. I don't see anywhere in the Bible where Jesus asked people to worship him. He was telling them that the way, the truth, and the light is the way to get to the Father, right? And then, and he has other verses in there saying, I am one with you, you are one with me, I am one with the Father. So he's not making a distinction between him and anybody else. He's just telling you the way, right? The way of the fool here, right? To drop everything and with your unconditional love and heart and just take your path forward. And you'll have to grow. You'll go through trials and tribulations. And so we see that is the story of Job, right? The original conflict in Job, where God and the devil, we have the two opposing forces are talking and then saying, hey, Job is, I'll dare you, your righteous servant Job here is, won't stand the test of time if I throw everything at him. And then, so God makes the bet. So sure, go for it, right? And so Job goes through all these trials. He loses his family. People get sick around him. And then if you look at it from the higher standpoint of we're all one mind, you could say that all of the voices in the book of Job are coming from Job, right? Because we are all one. And so all of those voices that were trying to make him feel like he was a victim were struck down. All of his friends were saying, hey, it's not your fault. It's this person's over here's fault. Well, those voices got struck down. They were not allowed to keep talking to Job. And Job said, oh, woe is me. The whole time he's felt sorry for himself because, in that way, he never really cursed, his higher self, because he realized that he was creating what he was going through. All of us create what we're going through. We are not victims. And that's the ultimate message there in the book of Job. You are creating the world around you. And as long as you see conflict, you will experience conflict. But when you realize that the people around you are just believing a lie, that there's something out there to get them, and that there's no reason to feel like you need to protect yourself. You are protected. You can expose yourself. You can become vulnerable. And that is the way to fulfillment, right? In our relationships. If you don't become vulnerable in your relationships and you don't show people your true self and love people for who you are, then you're not going to be fulfilled. And this is something that I talk about, and my whole journey and my whole life has come to this point where I've come to understand that you have to become vulnerable. and you have to show how you feel about somebody, or else you will you just will not get to that place where you'll be fulfilled, right? Because you're always hiding that part of yourself and you don't feel like you can share it. The reality is everybody around you is a part of you, and becoming vulnerable is part of that process. It's part of this journey, and this unconditional love for yourself and for the people around you. And that's how you get to back into the garden, right? You don't have to clothe yourself anymore, because you've come to that state where you know that there's no real conflict. All of these things that are happening around you are happening for a reason, and it's part of the greater plan to bring everyone back into that state where they realize, I am not alone. I am not at conflict with these people, and we're all just working together. There's no reason why I can't become vulnerable to you and tell you how I feel. And so I believe every spiritual text is supporting that. The Bible supports that. The book of Job supports that. The writings of Buddha, the Vedas, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. Everything is supporting the fact that you are an infinite being in an infinitely expanding and contracting universe. And my will is the Father's will, and your will is my will. And together, we will prosper together, and that is how we will ascend. We're coming to a time where, your karmic energies are going to keep causing you more and more problems. The more conflict that you're going to see, the more it's going to cause you personal anguish, because you're going to see yourself at odds with, the people around you. And so you really have to come to terms with yourself and start this personal journey and self-discovery and find out what your passion is and what you should be doing to really fulfill your life and fulfill your destiny. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. This was one of my favorite videos that I really wanted to make, because I've had such a deeper understanding of this especially in the last 2 months, that I was creating my own conflicts. I was seeing conflict, and so that's what I was creating. There's no reason to see conflict, and so I had to pull back. I had to come to a place where I had to think about what I was going through, and I always had this love for everybody, but that's not enough. You really have to come to this deeper awareness where everything happens for a reason, and everybody's decision around you is happening for you. So I love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video.